All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Today we're going to talk about managing your vCenter server lifecycle. There's a recent announcement on the vSphere blog. We just announced 6.7 Update 2. So a lot of this session is based off of the new functionality and features. And then we're going to go into some of the convergence and architecture things, because now we went from recommending an external deployment back to an embedded deployment. So we'll go through that as well. So here's the agenda. So like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of the architecture stuff. So deployment model, convergence, topology. Then we'll talk about file-based backup. There's some new functionality there. We'll talk about content library, and then we'll wrap it up with developer sender. So a quick introduction. My name is Emad Younis. I'm a product line manager for vCenter Server Lifecycle. I'm based out of Palo Alto, so I work out of the VMware headquarters. You can always contact me via Twitter, so @Emad_Younis. And I also have a technical blog where I talk about data center virtualization, emadyounis.com. Okay, so a bit of news that hopefully you're familiar with. If not, we'll make sure you are. 6.0, who's still here on 6.0? Okay, a couple of people. All right. So 6.0 is coming up on end of life in March of next year. So just like we did with 5.5, now 6.0 is going to be end of life. So it's time to start thinking about your next upgrade, either getting to at least a minimum of 6.5 or now 6.7, especially a lot of the new functionality in update 2 will hopefully be compelling enough to just upgrade to that release. The other thing is, if you're looking to see when products go end of life, this URL right here will, for lifecycle, will tell you when our products are slated to go end of life. So keep an eye on that list, and that way you'll be a little bit ahead of the curve. We also announced last year during VMworld Barcelona deprecation of using the external PSC. Now, when talking to our customers, we know that having multiple nodes, so these are two separate components, even though the PSC is just a vCenter server service, right? It's just running on a separate server or appliance, but it's still part of vCenter. But having this becomes more nodes to manage, more nodes to update, patch, upgrade, etc. And then if you want high availability, well, now you need a load balancer. So it becomes even more complex. So what we're doing is simplifying this deployment model completely, and we're going back to the embedded deployment model. There's no need for load balancers. We have VCHA for high availability. So this will make it easy also from a lifecycle perspective. So what we have is we have the Convergence Tool, which we announced in 6.7 Update 1. We've backported it to 6.5 Update 2D. And now we've made some enhancements, as you'll see later on, in 6.7 Update 2. So you don't need to worry about having to deal with it. We have the tools now for you to do the convergence. So one thing I wanted to point it out, when you think of like lifecycle, there's a lot of moving pieces in the data center, right? So you have your hosts, you have your virtual machines, you have your VCSAs, and that's just vSphere. On top of that, you have VMware's second-party products. So if you have SRM, you have VROPS, you have vCloud Director, there's a lot there. And then add into that, you have third-party products. So from a data center perspective, there's a lot to manage and a lot to consider when it comes to life cycle. For vSphere, it hasn't changed. It's been, these 5 steps, for a while. So, starting with vCenter Server first, always update vCenter Server. If you have external PSCs, well, you update the external PSCs first, and then you do vCenter Server. Then followed by the hosts. How many folks update their hosts? Okay, not too many, but okay. Virtual machines, it's pretty good. Storage, VMFS. All right. And then network. So if you're using a VDS, it's good. Yeah, so the goal here is to continue updating the lifecycle of these pieces so you get the benefits and the new functionality. If you're just updating vCenter, well, you're just getting some of the vCenter benefits, but the hosts don't benefit. And then if you're updating just vCenter and the hosts, well, the virtual machines don't benefit. So making sure that you're doing this as you upgrade or update will make sure that you get those benefits. And finally, we have resources to help you with your upgrades. So I wrote the 6.5 upgrade ebook, and then my counterparts, David and Nigel, took on the 6.7 upgrade ebook. So these URLs will help you download these ebooks and help you with your upgrade paths, whether you're going to 6.5 or 6.7. All right, so let's jump into the meat of this. So starting with 6.7 update 2, we now have within the installer a message stating that external deployments are considered deprecated. So whether you select the external PSC or you select just deploying a standalone vCenter, you're going to get the same message. The embedded deployment, which is the top piece, is the way to go. You can leverage the GUI, you can leverage the CLI to deploy, and we also have APIs to help you as well. So there's 3 different methods to deploy vCenter, and the recommended way to deploy vCenter is doing it via embedded deployment. So no more external deployment from here on out. At some point, you won't even have this option. The other thing to keep in mind is that from this perspective, we've simplified vCenter, right? So let's go in a little bit more. And in 6.7 update 2, what we've done under system configuration is we've actually brought in the Converge tool. So before, you only had it via CLI. Now, you can actually do it through the UI as well. So this way, all you have to do is select your vCenter and then click Converge. It will automatically take care of the Converge process, and then you can select that external PSC and click decommission, done, all through the UI. So that's a big improvement, and it's been a big ask from customers. So hopefully we'll see a lot more things like this coming. The other thing here that you'll notice is we'll show you like replication agreements and things like that. You'll also be able to log in directly to VMI, so you'll see appliance management. So from there, you'll be able to log in directly to VMI on port 5480. The other thing is we have 2 different views. So this is just the table view. If you just want to take a look at all your vCenters, all your PSCs, you can expand them out, and you'll get more information there. Or you can actually see it from the topology view. So now we can toggle back and forth. Here, it's a more, look and feel as far as how many PSCs, how many vCenters, and you can move them around as you choose. If you hover over it, you'll see the FQDN and things like that. So now you have 2 different views within the H5 client to manage your topology and to decommission and converge as well. The post-convergence will look something like this. So before we had multiple PSCs, we had multiple vCenters. Once we're done converging, it looks simple. So here in this picture, I have 2 vCenters, they're embedded, and that's it. It just becomes so much easier to manage and so simple. Again, here you'll see that I have 2 vCenters, their replication partners are there, whereas before, this information was done from the CLI. So you had to use something like VDC rep admin to get the replication partners. Now it's in the UI. And here's kind of a zoom in. Now, from the topology view, we actually have a legend here. So you'll be able to see your vCenters, your external PSCs. We support load balancers. So if you have a PSC behind load balancers for high availability, you'll also be able to converge it as well. You cannot decommission the load balancer. So if you have it and it shows up in the UI, you only decommission the PSCs, not the load balancer. And then we'll also show you the replication agreement and the connections as well within the UI. We also have it from the CLI perspective. So when you mount the VCSA ISO, you'll have the VCSA Converge CLI. And from templates, there's two options. There's Converge and there's Decommission. So you can do it from the UI and you can do it from the CLI. And keep in mind, this was backported all the way to 6.5 update U2D. But if you want to use the topology view and all the stuff that I just showed you, that's only in 6.7 update 2. We not only have UI, we not only have CLI, but we also have API as well. So you'll be able to do the convergence leveraging the APIs. So if you go to the API Explorer and you go under System Configuration, you'll see this new API to be able to automate for the convergence. And then under Topology, we also have an API to decommission your PSCs. So at scale, you'll be able to automate this and not even have to touch the UI if you don't choose. So you have different options to do the convergence. Just quick show of hands, who here leverages the VCSA APIs? One person? That breaks my heart. Also, the other thing that we've improved on is auditing. So today, when you try to log into the vSphere client, it just gives you a message when you fat finger your password, right? It just kind of says, wrong password. Now, when you do it, we'll actually start to log those logins. So if you log in successfully, we'll log it. If you log in and fail, we'll also log it. So now you kind of get more auditing and more things under the events of what's going on within VCSA. So now I know that, hey, Emad logged in successfully, or yeah, he fat fingered his password 3 times. So if I keep saying that this is not working, you can easily go here and say, well, man, you don't even know your password. Okay, so let's kind of go through an example of actually converting our vCenter server from external to embedded. So in this example, I have one external PSC and I have 2 vCenter servers. And the process is the same no matter the number of PSCs or vCenters. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I back up my environment before getting started, right? Once I'm done with that, I'm going to have some server, in this case it's a jump box, that has routable access to the PSCs and vCenters that I want to decommission. From there, I'm going to mount the ISO and I'm going to run the Convergence Tool. Now, the first vCenter that I'm going to do is this one right here. So as part of the process, in this external deployment, the PSC services are running on a separate appliance. I don't have those services on the vCenter that's registered to it. So what the Convergence Tool is going to do automatically is it's going to bring those PSC RPMs and bring them and install them inside that vCenter server, right? So that's the first step. The second step is it's now going to register and replicate from that external PSC the SSO information, right? Once that's done, this vCenter is good. So I'm going to start the next vCenter. So I have a question. When I'm starting to do the replication, am I going to replicate the second vCenter with the external PSC or with the embedded PSC in the other one? Who says external PSC? Who says embedded? Who's asleep? All right. So let's take a look. So now that I have my 2 PSCs, I'm going to do the replication with the embedded. And the reason is, if I do it this way, I keep link mode, right? The only reason that I was external in the first place was I wanted to have enhanced link mode. So I want to keep that enhanced link mode. So to do this, I need to replicate with the first embedded deployment. If I don't do it and replicate with the external PSC, I've created a silo. I have now an island. So I broke my link mode. The good news is we have tools that will help you bring it back. but I want to make sure that you understand this piece so you don't have to use those tools and do extra work if you don't have to. So again, like we recommended before, a nice linear topology, same thing here. So we've started with our first one, and in our second one, we'll point to the first one. Make sense? Okay. The next step is I may have other products that are registered with the PSC using authentication. So things like SRM, VROPS, HCX, NSX will leverage the PSC for authentication. Well, before I decommission, I need to re-register them with one of these embedded deployments. Okay, so that make sure you do that. Otherwise, you'll find out fairly quickly those products won't work. Then I'll go ahead and decommission the external PSC. And once that's done, I now have 2 vCenters like I had before. Link mode, now only 2 versus 3 nodes or more, depending on how many PSCs you have. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we'll talk about the file-based backup and the new capabilities. So in 6.5, we introduced a native file-based backup within the VCSA. So now what we'll do is from the VAMI on port 5480, we can back up the entire appliance, meaning we'll back up the files that make up the appliance. So you'll have about 11 or 12 files, and we'll dump them to a particular protocol that we support. So in 6.5, we supported HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, FTPS, and SCP. In 6.7 update 2, we've now added NFS and SMB, right? So now this makes it even more valuable that you can use an NFS mount or SMB or whatever. So the other thing that we've done is we've added a lot more notifications and alarming mechanisms for the file-based backup. So now you can actually see an alarm within the vCenter server summary that says, hey, your file-based backups failed or they succeeded. So this is, again, more improvements as we move forward. So here, in this example, my backup failed, and I got a warning here, and now I can go into VAMI and take a look and see why my backup failed. The other thing here too is under the events, we will also log those for auditing purposes. So you'll see if your backup has actually succeeded or if it's failed. Who here is using the VCSA file-based backup? Okay. For those of you that didn't raise your hands, why? Okay. So let me kind of give you this tidbit. If you're leveraging, let's say, image level backups for VCSA, that image level backup is going to take that state, that current state as it is. It has no clue if it's a good state or a bad state, right? It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to take the current state, and then when I need to restore, it's basically a surprise for you. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad, and you'll find out fairly quickly if it's bad. With the file-based backup, a couple of things. You can actually run it hot, so no QSing required. The other thing is we look at the services before we back up. So we're going to look and see if these services are up and running and in a good state. And if they are, we'll back up. If they're not, we will actually pop up a message for certain services, the ones that we deem important, and say this service is not in a good state or it's down or something. You need to take action. And after you take that action, we'll allow you to back it up. So at least with this, you know that backing it up, you're in a good state prior. And you can leverage both. So like in your case, you're saying Zerto, you can leverage Zerto, and you can also leverage the file-based backup and think of it more like an insurance policy, right? And especially if you have, let's say, a backup team in-house, well, they're going to use whatever they need to use regardless. You can leverage this on the side, and then if something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, you now have a little bit of an advantage. You can restore and not have to wake up the backup guy or wait on the backup guy. So again, this provides some functionality that helps ensure that the VCSA is at least backed up properly. The other thing you can do now is you can define alarms within vCenter about the file-based backup. So you can go in here and say, hey, I want to know if the backup job failed, give me this type of warning. If the backup job succeeded, flag it with this. And now you're ensured to get notifications for this. By the way, we also have APIs that you can leverage for the one person in the room that uses the APIs. So content library also gets some improvement. In 6.7 update 1, for the first time, content library was able to acknowledge what a native VM template is. Before, you would have to convert your template to an OVF. Now in 6.7 update 1, it recognized that this thing is a native VMTX template. In 6.7 update 2, what we're doing now is we're allowing you to replicate those templates from one content library to another. So the good news here is now I don't have to, if I have multiple sites or multiple data centers, I can start from, let's say, data center A and upload the templates there, and then I can have them replicate to data center B. So one centralized place to manage all my templates, and that way if you do any updates or anything like that, you don't have to worry about them. So what winds up happening is once you get content library up, you'll right-click on the VM, you'll say clone to library, and that's how you'll convert it back to a template for content library to acknowledge. And then what we'll do here is we'll actually publish the library. And then once it's published and ready to go, you'll see that the VM templates in the library will be published, and that any subscriber will also get those templates as you run through them. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. Is this compelling enough, or are there any features missing for content library based off this? All right. So Developer Center. Who here is using the Fling, the H5 Fling that we have out there? Who's aware that we have a Fling? Okay. So on the Fling's website, we have an H5 client Fling. It's a separate appliance. And what we're doing there is we're actually providing you a sneak peek into upcoming features. So it doesn't do any disruption to your environment, but you'll see all the new functionality and things that we have coming ahead early on, and they'll make it eventually inside the vSphere client. And one of those things that we had was Developer Center. Now, Developer Center started in VMware Cloud on AWS. Now it's landed in the Fling, and then with 6.7 update 2, we now have it natively within the client. So once you log into the vSphere client, you'll see Developer Center. And there's kind of two things to look for. If you remember the old school Onyx, where it would record what, an action. So let's say I want to deploy a VM. Onyx would go out there, it would record what you were doing, and it would spit out code based off of that action. So now within the UI, we have what's called code capture. So with code capture, once you enable it, up in the upper right-hand corner by your login name, you'll see like a little red record button. So as you do these actions, it will record it, and it will spit out the code in Power CLI. So for this first release, you'll get all the code within Dev Center for Power CLI for any action that you do. That's pretty cool. The other thing also to point out is here, once it's done, you can copy it, you can download it, or you can clear it and start over. Useful? Okay, so the API Explorer was basically to get to it before, you had to do the FQDN or IP address of the VCSA/API Explorer. Now we have it natively within the client. And the good news is, especially like you can see here in my example, I have 2 vCenters in link mode. So I'm already authenticated to the vCenters. So all I have to do is toggle between either vCenter, and I can start leveraging the APIs there as well from within the client and no longer have to go outside of the client for that. And that's all I have. So a lot of, like I said, a lot of new functionality and a lot of new features in 6.7 Update 2. Typically in a Update 2 release, it's more around like updates, patches, roll up, right? We normally don't have a lot of new functionality. This was just only for vCenter. If you go out to the vSphere blog itself, there's other components that have gotten new functionality as well. So this actually is almost a release on its own. So just kind of keep watching this space because there's more coming in regards to vCenter. And like I said earlier, I'm the product line manager for vCenter Server Lifecycle. So all the stuff around deployments, upgrades, migration, patching. If you have feedback, I'm the guy to talk to because it may eventually make it into the product. So think big, and if you have a wish list, let's talk after this. Thanks for the time.